Welcome, students. Today is Monday, August the 31st, and today we will be going over lesson number 6. Lesson number 6, and the title of that lesson is Interpreting Data. Interpreting Data. This is our second day for interpreting data. Our I can statement remains the same as the first 5 lessons. I can represent and interpret data using whole numbers. I can represent and interpret data using whole numbers. Our essential question: how is data useful in real-world situations? How is data useful in real-world situations? Now, we've been building upon our answers to this question from the beginning of the unit last week. And we've been discussing different ideas about how data can be used in a real-world situation. We're going to continue building on it today. Our learning target: today, I will be able to interpret data from a scale bar graph by asking and answering questions that involve additive and multiplicative comparisons about data. So again, our learning target: today, I will be able to interpret data from a scale bar graph by asking and answering questions that involve additive and multiplicative comparisons about data. I notice, I wonder. Our next couple of slides are going to be you being able to look at different graphs and determining what you notice and what you wonder about them. Let's take a look at this one. And this is actually the same as on page number 25 in your binder. So you can follow along on the slideshow, or you can go to, if you're live, or you can go to page 25 in your binder. This is going to be the top part of page number 25 in your binder. And it says the title, The Great Pumpkin Way Off. The Great Pumpkin Way Off. Let's take a look. We're going to pause for a second. Just take a look, give you a minute to examine the actual graph itself. So what do you notice about this graph, and what do you wonder about it? Now, if you're watching a recorded version of this, I want you to, pause again and go on and write down in your math notebook, what do you notice about it and what do you wonder about it? And for those of us who are live, I want you to type into the chat box, what do you notice about it and what do you wonder about it? So type it into the chat box. What do you notice about it? What do you wonder about this particular graph? So we're going to pause again for you to be able to do that. So when you look at this graph closely, you should see that the graph shows 8 different pumpkins. If you denote it here at the bottom, pumpkin A, pumpkin B, pumpkin C, pumpkin D, pumpkin E, pumpkin F, and pumpkin G, and pumpkin H. So you've got 8 different pumpkins that were entered into the largest pumpkin contest at a local fair. So these pumpkins were entered into the largest pumpkin contest at a local fair. So what does this graph measure? What does it measure, or what does it show? So we're going to pause a second for you to type your idea into the chat box. What does it measure? So if you said that it measures the weight of each pumpkin, you would be correct. If you said that this graph measured the weight of each pumpkin, you would be correct. Which pumpkin weighs the most? Which of these pumpkins weigh the most? So when you go across here, you look at the actual bars, you should be able to tell which one is actually the highest. Which one represents the highest number as far as weight goes. So we're going to pause a second and let you put your answer in there for which pumpkin weighs the most. So if you said that this particular pumpkin, which is going to be pumpkin D, if you said that that one weighs the most, you would be correct. And when you ask the question of how much does it weigh, now you have to go up to the top of the bar, and we go across here and we see that, okay, at this point is 600, and when we go all the way to the top of the bar, This is 700, but it's not quite at 700 pounds. It's a little bit in between 700 and 600, but it's not specifically in the middle. It's not in the middle. So 650 would be the middle in between 700 and 750. So 650 would be right in the middle, and this is kind of in between 650 and 700. So if you now you could say that this was around 670 or 680, 670 or 680, and that would be a correct answer for how much does it weigh. So which of these pumpkins weigh the least? Which one weighs the least? So again, you're going to go across, look at each pumpkin, and then you're going to go up to the bar and see, well, which one has basically the shortest bar? Which one has the shortest bar? And then you're going to say, how much does that one weigh? So we're going to pause a second. I want you to take a look at the graph again to determine which one weighs the least, and also how much does it weigh. We're going to pause, and I want you to type your answers into the chat box for that. If you're watching a recorded version of this, you're going to write it in your notebook. Okay, so for the question of which pumpkin weighs the least, when you go across and you look at the bar with that is the shortest, it's going to be pumpkin H. So if you said pumpkin H weighs the least, you would be correct. And when you think about and you look at, well, how much does that one weigh? So it's right here. So when you go all the way across, you'll see that it's pretty much right in the middle. It's right in the middle of 100 and 200. So what number goes in the middle of 100 and 200? So if you answered 150, if you answered 150 for that one, you would be correct. So let's talk for a minute about the scale of this particular graph. Let's talk about the scale for this graph. So when you look at this graph again, and you look at the scale, that means you're going to be looking at the numbers right over here, and you're going to be determining how much of a difference is there between one of these lines to the next. From one interval to the next, how much of a difference do you see? So we're going to pause a second to give you an opportunity to figure out what is the difference, what is the scale, and for our live session, you're going to type it into the chat box. So if you said that the scale is 100, you would be correct, because the difference between 0 and 100 is 100, because you would go 100 minus 0 equals 100. 200 minus 100 is 100, and if you keep going from one to the other, the difference will be 100. That is the scale. So our next slide here, we're going to do what do you notice and what do you wonder with this one also. Of course, the title is number of entries for the Great Pumpkin Weigh Off, the number of entries for the Great Pumpkin Weigh Off. Now, this particular part of the graph, it is also on page 25 in your binder. It is also on page 25 in your binder. It is just the bottom part of the page. It's just the bottom part of the page. Okay, so what do you notice and what do you wonder about this? We're going to pause for a minute for you to think about your answers, and then I would like for you, if you're live, to type your answers into the chat box. If you are watching the recorded version, go ahead on and just write your notes into your math binder, your math notebook rather. Okay, so this is a line plot. This is a line plot graph, and what it is showing is the number of entries for pumpkin weigh-offs. It's showing the number of entries for pumpkin weigh-offs. So over the years, there have been 18 pumpkins entered 3 times. So over the years, there have been a total of 18 pumpkins entered 3 times. There have been 20 pumpkins entered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. There have been 20 pumpkins entered 7 times. So we're going to pause for a second, and I want you to be able to tell me, well, for how many pumpkins were entered 21 times? How many were entered 23 times? So for 21 times, you'll see that there were 2 pumpkins entered for 21 times, And when we go down to 23, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pumpkins entered 23 times, and 25. For 25 times, there were 3. There were 3. Our next question is going to be, which amount of entries was the most common throughout the years? Which amount of entries was the most common throughout the years? So take a minute to look at the graph, and for our live section, you're going to go on and type your answer into the chat box. The question again is, which of the entries was the most common throughout the years? So for the question of which amount of entries was most common throughout the years, you're going to look and see which one of these total amount of tallies was repeated. And 3 was the most common because it happened twice. So next up, guys, we're going to do some practice on Schoolnet, and your teacher is going to guide you through this. If you're live, if you're recorded version, you're going to listen in, and there's a video that you're going to be able to watch. Okay, so Schoolnet. Now we're nearing the end of our unit. We're actually at the end of our unit for Unit 1 Math, and tomorrow we will be having our first end of unit assessment. Tomorrow we will be having our first end of unit assessment, and we're going to take that assessment on Schoolnet. Some of you may have already had some exposure to Schoolnet. So what is Schoolnet? It's just an online learning tool that can be used for assessments. It's an online learning tool that can be used for assessments, and that's how we're going to take our assessments. Okay, so during our live session, we're going to be able to watch a video on how to log in, and your individual teachers will speak to you about how to log in. And after we practice logging in, we've got a practice quiz that your teacher is going to guide you through. And the code for our practice quiz is listed right here. It's VY3DY8. Okay, so your individual teacher is going to guide you through this if you're particularly in the live session. And for those of you watching a recorded version of this, you can practice logging in right here, and you're also going to be able to you can watch the video, and you're also going to be able to use this for the practice. So for our independent work, we're going to be doing page number 29 in your math binder. So you're going to do page 29 in your math binder, and the title of that one is Analyzing a Bar Graph Homework. And you're going to complete it on the actual paper form in your binder, and after you've completed it, you're going to use the steps that your teacher has explained to you about how to upload. So you're going to complete it, answer all the questions, and then you're going to take a picture of it, and only after you've taken a picture and added it to your assignment will you mark it complete. So only after you've taken your picture and you've added it to your assignment will you mark it complete. Okay, so after you've completed that, then take a little bit of time to review some of the things we've already worked on all week, and get prepared for our assessment tomorrow. Thank you.